board will receive a presentation from, is it Stifle? Stifle. I knew I'd mispronounce it.
I don't think anyone gets it right.
we all-
On future bond options.
The E should be in front of the F.
Some people put it on their email signature on how to say it because it gets mispronounced so often, so.
While Mel is setting up, Bill, and I guess you're our only representative here, we are actually videotaping these presentations to put on our website and Facebook pages, so anyone who is not here can actually see the presentation, so that will be available for you to review, along with anybody else.
Great, thank you. My name is Luke Brugman. I'm with Stifle. We're the bond underwriter to the school. We got asked to just come and maybe explore some options on some potential financing scenarios in your debt service fund, but also potential operating referendum and how your operations fund is going to look in a few years. So just going to go ahead and get started with the debt. This slide right here is just your outstanding debt. It's your existing payments that you already have. The column on the left-hand side is your current tax rate as we're projecting it. So you can see in 2019, it was about just under 13 cents. Going forward, you're going to have some debt fall off. Starting beginning next year, a little bit more, 25, and then obviously there's a huge cliff in 28. So what we looked at was doing a $3.1 million bond issue. Issuing the bonds in summer of 2020. The blue bar is still the existing debt. The red is the 2020 bonds. We assumed current market rates plus 1%. Today, roughly, if you were to do a bond issue for 20 years, you're looking at an interest rate of maybe 3%. So we're using about 4. So if you were to issue $3.1 million, you would get approximately 2.9 for hard and soft costs. 100,000 of that approximately would go to cost of issuance, pay professional fees, your underwriter, your bond counsel, rating agent fee, all those fees that come to go to make the team, to make this bond issue happen would get paid out of the bond issue. And then capitalized interest, that's really just a fancy word to say, we're gonna take some proceeds from the bonds and use it to repay investors, so we limit your tax rate the first year. If we didn't have that, then you'd see a slight spike in your tax rate. Again, these are conservative numbers, so hopefully those dollars are a little bit less and you get more in the hard and soft cost construction fund. Again, no increase over what we were trying to target was the 2019 debt service rate, which was 0.1284. So that's what we were targeting. If you issued the bonds in 2020, it would hit your levy beginning in 2021. We kind of followed the same pattern that you can see with the existing debt to leave some flexibility beginning in 27 and 28. For people that are a little like to look at numbers instead of a graph, this is really just the data that we derived from that graph. So on the left-hand side, what we have highlighted here is your assessed value. You can see in 2017 it was about 820 million. In 2020, the number is 875 million. So you've grown 50 million over a 4-year period. The average growth over the 5-year period is about 2.9%. To be conservative, we've assumed 0% NAV growth. It's ranged from 1% to about 5%. We can adjust that going forward. There's people out there that do assessed valuation studies, but we felt like that was a good conservative number to start with. It's just a flat line NAV. What we have highlighted here is the debt service payments. On the left-hand side is your current debt obligations. In the middle is your 2020 bonds, what we're estimating that payment to be. Again, we won't know until we actually sell the bonds. And then on the right-hand side is your total debt payments, which is just your current plus your 2020 bond issue. Most importantly, what does that do for your tax rate? On the far right-hand side, you can see what we have highlighted in gray is 0.1284 cents in 2019. We're targeting that rate in 2021 and going forward. We're projecting a slight drop in 2020, primarily due to the NAV growth of going to 3%. The tax rate, the biggest factor that impacts that is going to be your net assessed value. So when you do see some growth there, that is going to knock your tax rate down a little bit. So tying all of that in, your debt service fund to the entire financial picture for the school corporation. There's also the operations fund, which is formerly the capital projects, bus replacement, and transportation fund, which is like the purple bar here. The Department of Local Government Finance allows you to increase that fund by 3.5%. Well, by the assessed value growth quotient. This in 2020 it's going to be 3.5%. In 2019 it's 3.4%. It's based on the trailing five non-farm payroll. So we know it's going to be somewhere in between 3 and 4%. We've assumed it's going to stay at 3.5% in our model. You can see if you flatline the net assessed value, but your operations fund increases by 3.5%, you will see a slight increase in your tax rate solely because of that. The debt payments are still at the bottom. That's the flat line, nothing changed from the previous graph. We're also asked to add in a potential operating referendum, which is $1.5 million annually that the school would receive in the operations fund. It's approximately 17.5 cents on your tax rate. So in this scenario, in this model, we built it in that you would go either May or November to the ballots and ask for that, which would allow you to hit, for the operating referendum, hit the levy beginning in 2022. When you pass an operating referendum in Indiana, it's good for 8 years. It was previously good for 7. They extended it 1 additional year. This is the same chart that I showed a second ago, but now we factor in that operations levy and the operating referendum levy. I know those numbers are kind of small there, but if you focus on the purple, the operating fund levy, you can see when you take that assessed value growth quotient at AVGQ and you multiply that year after year. In 2017, your operations fund levy was $3.8 million. By 2024, if you apply that all the way and you take the full AVGQ, you're just under $5 million. We've stopped the growth quotient at 2024 just because at some point when you start factoring in assumptions for so long, we know they're going to be wrong at some point. So we stopped in 2024. I guess the one other thing I'll say with the AVGQ is you're not required to take all of it. The state just allows you to take that amount. So again, what does this do for your tax rate? I have it on the highlight on the right here. I'm going to skip ahead one page because we blow this up a little bit so it's easier to see. Debt service, nothing has changed here from the previous slide. We just brought in the operations fund and the operating referendum. So the operation fund increase, if you took the assessed value growth quotient, that's what your operations fund tax rate would increase by. So what does that mean to a $100,000 home? It's approximately another $1 a month or $12 a year. For a $250,000 home, it's about $4 a month or $49 a year. For the operation or for the operating referendum, that's $17.50 to generate approximately $1.5 million. You can see the numbers there. For a $100,000 home, it's just under $5, and for a $250,000 home, it's just under $19. And that $17.50, again, you don't have to take that full amount if it was to be passed, but it would allow you to do that if you wanted to. And that will grow and shrink with your net assessed value as well. The other option that we looked at was doing a $1.2 million bond issue. Same type of thing here though. Summer 2020 we would issue the bonds. We've assumed conservative market rates, today market rate plus a full percent. So in this scenario, if you issued 1.2 million, you get about $1,050,000 in project hard and soft costs. And then there's capitalized interest and cost of issuance that is included in that number as well. And so how we got to the 1.2 number was we based it on what we're projecting the 2020 debt service rate to be. We still allow for a cliff beginning in 2028 for future flexibility. If the school wanted to either drop the tax rate there or if they wanted to fund additional projects, they would have some capacity there and just some flexibility to do that at that point. And by no way are these structures final by any means. These are just beginning options, so just keep that in mind as well. Same thing as the previous graph. We're just layering in the operations fund and the operating referendum. You can see when we do that, the total tax rate gets to about 86, 87 cents when you have your operations fund, if you include the full AVGQ, your debt service rate, and also your operating referendum. Currently, the school's tax rate is about 61 or 62 cents. A big chunk of that would be the operating referendum at 17.5 cents. And I guess that number is also not set in stone. That was just numbers provided to us just to give everyone kind of some information on the impact that may have for the school. Same chart as previously, the debt service increase or decrease, what does that do? We're now basing off the 2020 rate, so no real impact. When you go over to the operations fund, that has not changed from the previous one, same with the operating referendum. That's the same as what was on the previous table. So I know I threw a lot at you guys and a lot of numbers. Feel free to ask, do you guys have any questions?
So what all can the bonds be used for? If you do a bond?
Yeah, they need to be used for capital projects, so some.
Only capital,
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
you can't use it to fund any operations,
okay.
but without bond counsel, without the lawyers getting involved at least, I'll say that.
So you only have homes on here, what does that do for business tax and also for ag tax?
That's a good question. So to do that, we can provide the calculation for everyone. A lot of times whenever there's an operating referendum, we'll actually, if we're involved at all, we'll put together a tax calculator you can put on your website, and we'll have in there if you're a homestead, or if it's ag land or commercial, what that would be as well. So I didn't provide that information on this, but we can certainly get that for you. The main difference between the home and ag or commercial is that we're getting all the deductions, the homestead, the standard, that stuff. If you take those deductions away, then it's the same calculation to get there. If you guys have any questions later on, they know where to find me. I'm happy to get any follow-up information.
So if my calculations are right, if we were to do the $1.2 million bond and the 17.5-cent referendum, total cost annually for a $100,000 home would be an increase of $69.64. And I'm asking you this just to make sure that I'm reading your chart right.
Yes, that's correct, assuming that you take the full operation to
Correct,
ADGQ.
at the 17.5 cent.
And net assessed value doesn't go down by a lot or increase by a lot.
Right.
Right, that's correct, that's correct.
Does anybody else have any questions
Not yet.
for Luke?
Not yet.
Well, feel free to follow up if you do have
We
any.
will. We will definitely will.
Now, it's my understanding that,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you,
very much.
this is nothing, this was just informational only, so there's no action required by the board tonight.
Same
Just,
information, we ask them to be as conservative as possible with all numbers. We tend to do our finances that way, so we ask them to do the same.
very good. Thanks again, Luke, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Very well done. Item E, board